Hi, my name is Vanessa Cardenas, and this is Unit G, Concepts 1 through 7. So the equation that I decided to base this on was x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x over x squared plus x minus 2. So because it is 1 degree bigger on top, it's not a horizontal asymptote, it is a slant asymptote, and how we solve slant asymptotes is by using long division. So I ended up getting my denominator and I put it on the outside and my numerator on the inside, and I end up getting x plus 2, and I don't really care about the remainder because all we care about is finding the mx plus b. So y equals x plus 2, and in order to plot this in a more simpler way, what I can do is I subtracted x and to both sides to get negative x plus y equals 2. And if you cover negative x, y equals 2. If I cover y, then x equals negative 2. So I ended up getting the points y equals 2 and x equals negative 2. So I go to y equals 2 and x equals negative 2, and I draw a line. And that's my slant asymptote. Right there, that dotted line right here. So then I have to continue, and I now have to find my vertical asymptote, and by doing that I have to factor out my equation. So x squared plus x minus 2 ends up factoring out to x minus 1 and x plus 2, and x cubed plus 3x squared minus 4x ends up factoring out to x parentheses x minus 1 and x plus 4. And we have a whole because the top one and the bottom are the same. So the only vertical asymptote that I'm going to have is, since we are just focusing on the denominator, it's going to be x plus 2. So we equal that to 0, and we end up getting x equals negative 2. And if I were to plug in my original equation into my calculator, I will see this graph, and the graph ends up looking something like this, which is my overall. But what it shows us is that if I go to the point negative 2, it shows me that to the right of the graph, my graph is going down, and to the left of the point negative 2, my graph is going up. So that ends up being my limit notation. So going back to my wholes, which was x minus 1, I equal x minus 1 to 0 and end up getting x equals 1. So what we do with this number is that we plug it into our original factored equation. So now ignoring the whole, being x times x plus 4 over x plus 2. So 1 plus 4 over 1 plus 2 being 5 over 3. So 1, 5 over 3 is being my point. So I go to 1, 5 over 3, and I plot it with the open circle because it is a whole. So our line doesn't go through it because it is a whole. And our domain is diva, which is our vertical asymptotes and wholes. So that ends up being x equals negative 2 and x equals 1. So negative 2 and 1. My interval notation is negative infinity to negative 2, negative 2 to 1, and 1 to infinity. My x-intercepts is my factored numerator. So ignoring the whole once again, so it ends up being x parentheses x plus 4 equals 0 because we have to equal it to 0. And if I cover this, x equals 0. If I cover this, x equals negative 4. So my points are 0, 0, and negative 4 is 0. So I go to my graph and I plotted 0, 0. I go to negative 4, 0, and I plotted that too. To find my y-intercepts, what I do is going back to the factored equation, ignoring our wholes once again. I just plug in 0 for the value of x, so it ends up being 0 parentheses 0 plus 4, which is technically 4, but 0 times 4 equals 0. And 0 plus 2, which is 2, so 0 over 2. So there is no y-intercept, so I do not plot my y-intercept. Okay, so I need more points to the left of my graph, and I need 3 more points, and I just need one more point to the right because we need 3 points for each side of our graph. So I chose the points -3, -6, and -5. I didn't need a -4 because I already had it for my x-intercepts. So if I plug in the equation into my graph and plug in -5, -6, and -3 for the x value, my y ends up being, for -5, -1.6, for -6, -3, for -3, my y ends up being 3. So I plugged in those points, this being my x and this being my y. I plugged those in and I ended up getting these, so I ended up plotting them right around here. So then I drew my line, and to the right I just needed 1 point, which was 2, because I already had 0, 0, and I already had my whole, which was 1, 5/3, so all I needed was one more point, so I picked point 2. So if I plugged in 2 for my x value, I ended up getting 3 as my y, so I ended up going to 2, 3, so up here, and I drew my line once again not touching my vertical asymptote because it's not allowed to touch the vertical asymptote. Thank you.